Welcome, dear friend. It is time to let go of the day's burdens. Let your body sink deeply into your soft resting place. Tonight, we will listen together to the profound wisdom of non-attachment. We will journey to the quiet, unshakable place within you. The place that remains steady, whether the world is in chaos or in perfect stillness. Close your eyes now. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly. Do not try to think, simply let go. Welcome to Lotus Whisper, your sanctuary of story and stillness. Tonight, we turn our attention to the ancient secret that unlocks an unshakable mind, the wisdom of non-resistance. We have been taught to fight, to chase, to hold on tight to everything we value. But what if the deepest safety, the most profound peace, comes not from control, but from the great letting go? We will explore the teachings that reveal control to be an illusion, fragile and temporary, and that true strength is found in meeting life, in all its unpredictable flow, with calm awareness. This is not a lesson in giving up, but a map to finding the peace that no circumstance can take away. Please consider subscribing to the channel to receive more stories and wisdom meant for your deepest rest and awakening. Part 1. The raft is not the shore. This evening, let us begin our journey into non-attachment with one of the Buddha's oldest and most powerful parables. It is known simply as the parable of the raft. Imagine you are a traveler standing on the edge of a great, wide river. The river is turbulent and dangerous, filled with crocodiles, strong currents, and jagged rocks. On this side, the bank is treacherous and full of peril. But across the water, the far shore is safe, peaceful, and beckoning, a place of quiet sanctuary. You realize you must cross. So, with great effort and ingenuity, you gather reeds, logs, and vines. You spend days weaving and tying them together, shaping them into a solid, functional raft. This raft is your salvation. It is born of your greatest need and your deepest wisdom. It is the perfect tool for the sanctuary, but you are not walking easily. You are staggering, you are burdened. Every step is a heavy labor, and the raft, the very thing that brought you freedom, is now the source of your pain. The Buddha teaches us, the wise traveler does not carry the raft. Having crossed, they leave it on the riverbank. They let it go. They do not cling to the means, for the means have served their purpose. The freedom is found in the safe shore, not in the memory or the weight of the tool. This raft, the Buddha explains, is the teaching itself. It is the map, the method, the philosophy, even the moral code. These are all skillfully constructed tools, essential for the crossing from the shore of suffering to the shore of peace. They are invaluable for navigating the difficult waters of life. But once you have reached the place of stillness, once you have understood the truth in your bones, you must not cling to the teachings. The moment you become attached to the raft, to the exact form of the ritual, to the precise phrasing of the scripture, to the single method of practice, it ceases to be a tool and becomes a burden. It becomes a heavy wooden weight on your shoulders, keeping you from walking lightly and freely into the peace you have already found. The mind loves to collect. It loves to categorize and keep the things that have worked. It says, I found peace through this specific belief. I must hold on to this belief or the peace will vanish. But the peace is not in the belief. The peace is in the crossing. The attachment to views is one of the deepest traps of the seeking mind. When we cling to our views, our opinions, our doctrines, our certainties, we are essentially carrying a heavy raft inland. We stop seeing the world as it is and start seeing it only through the lens of what we think it should be. Imagine two travelers on the path. One carries the raft. He is exhausted, constantly arguing with others about the superiority of his raft-building materials. He cannot see the beauty of the safe shore because his vision is obscured by a large rough log pressing against his head. The other traveler walks freely. He remembers the raft with gratitude, but he is unburdened. He can see the path clearly. This is the first lesson of the unshakable mind. Do not carry the raft. Breathe into this lightness now. Feel the weight lift from your shoulders. There is nothing to hold on to, not even the story you just heard. Let it sink into your deep, restful mind, and simply rest in the space of no burden. The empty cup. Tonight, let us settle deeper into the quiet wisdom of letting go, moving from the weight of the raft to the heaviness within our own minds. We turn now to one of the most famous parables in the Zen tradition, a simple story of tea called The Empty Cup. Imagine the stillness of a monastery high in the mountains of Japan, many centuries ago. The air is cool, carrying the faint, earthy scent of damp moss and cedar. Inside a simple hut, a Zen master named Nanin sits waiting. His dwelling is sparse, yet utterly complete, holding only what is essential: a woven mat, a low table, and the quiet sound of breath. To this quiet place comes a scholar. This man is not a simple seeker. He is a person of immense education, renowned for his knowledge. He has read every scroll, debated every point of philosophy, and mastered the formal structures of Buddhist doctrine. His mind is a vast, meticulously organized library, filled from floor to ceiling with books of wisdom. He has come to Nanin, not for a path, but for a final validation, a confirmation that his vast, intellectual collection is indeed Zen. He is confident. He is ready to receive the final secret that will complete his knowledge. The scholar bows formally, perhaps with a touch too much ceremony, and begins to speak. His words pour out, a torrent of terminology, definitions, and sophisticated concepts. He speaks of nirvana, of emptiness, of the distinctions between different schools of thought. He speaks of the path he is already on, and the profound things he already knows. Master Nanin listens with an air of profound stillness. He doesn't interrupt. He simply motions for the scholar to sit and prepares tea. The master's movements are slow, deliberate, and deeply respectful. He warms the small clay pot. He measures the leaves. The fragrance begins to fill the room, a warm, grounding scent that seems to ask the frantic mind to slow down. If then, slowly, almost inevitably, it spills over. A drop falls onto the low table, then 2 drops. Then a small stream of hot, precious tea begins to flow across the polished wood, dripping steadily onto the mat below. The scholar, still mid-sentence about the nature of non-duality, stops abruptly. The sight of the waste, the transgression, finally breaks through his intellectual armor. "Master!" he exclaims, a sound of urgency and shock breaking the stillness. "It is overflowing! The cup is full! No more will go in." Nanin stops pouring. He gently sets down the teapot and looks calmly into the scholar's startled eyes. "You are right," the master says, his voice soft yet ringing with absolute truth. "This cup is full." He gestures slowly, indicating the spillage on the table, the overflowing rim, the drops soaking into the mat. "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions, your own ideas, your own knowledge, and your own speculations," Nanin explains. "You are filled with concepts of Zen, with the weight of everything you have read and categorized." He pauses, allowing the gentle silence of the koan to settle into the room. "How?" Nanin asks, his voice inviting and deeply patient. "Can I possibly show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? This question is not a scolding. It is an offering of the deepest possible freedom. It reveals the essential truth that the greatest obstacle to wisdom is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. The scholar had come to acquire more. He was ready to stack one more book, one more elegant idea, one more label onto the already crushing weight of his mental library. He was seeking to complete his collection, to finalize his identity as one who knows. But his very completeness, his fullness, was his captivity. When our cup is full, nothing new can enter, and worse, nothing fresh can be tasted. We experience the world not as it is, vast, fresh, dynamic, but only as a confirmation or a contradiction of what we already hold. Think of your own life, right now as you listen. Where is your cup overflowing?
Peace, but we have forgotten how to walk in peace. We have learned the definitions of non-attachment, but we are desperately attached to the definition itself. This state of fullness creates anxiety. When you are full, you are rigid. There is no flexibility, no space for the unexpected turn of life. If you move, the tea spills. If you are challenged, your carefully constructed structure of belief collapses. So you must remain utterly still, terrified of motion, terrified of change, desperately protecting the overflowing rim of your mind. True non-attachment begins with the profound, courageous act of emptying. It is not an aggressive act of throwing things out, but a gentle, trusting movement of allowing the excess to flow away. To empty the cup is to admit, I don't know. To admit, I don't know is not a sign of weakness. It is the sign of the beginner's mind, Shoshin. The beginner's mind is wide, spacious, and humble. It is ready for the world to reveal itself without prejudice. When you walk into a room with an empty cup, you don't project your past judgments onto the people inside. You don't immediately label the situation. You simply see, you listen, you are present. And in that pure space of presence, Zen, the living, breathing truth of life, can finally be poured in. Imagine sitting with the master now, not as a demanding student, but as an open vessel. You gently tilt your cup and allow the old tea, the old grievances, the old certainties, the rigid opinions to pour out. Listen to the sound of the flow. Hopes flow out. Fears flow out. The need to be right flows out. What remains is not emptiness in the sense of a void, but emptiness in the profound sense of capacity. The cup is not destroyed. It is restored to its function. It is ready to hold the warm liquid of the present moment, perfectly and fully, without spilling. The empty cup is the unshakable mind. It is not shaken by chaos because it holds nothing to begin with. It allows the circumstance to fill it completely, moment by moment, without attachment to what was poured in before or what will be poured in next. It is light. It is flexible. It is free. Rest by centuries of fallen pine needles. You arrive at a small, humble hermitage, the home of the great Zen master, Hakuin Ikaku. Hakuin was a powerful teacher, a man whose wisdom was said to shine like polished stone, a man known for driving his students to the very brink of their intellectual limits, only to usher them into the vast, open space of realization. A young seeker approaches Hakuin. This seeker is earnest, intelligent, and deeply burdened by the complexity of his own thoughts. He is tired of the endless debates, the contradictory scriptures, and the constant striving of the self. He longs for a direct, undeniable experience of truth, a place where all struggle ceases. He bows low and asks the master, "Reverend Master, I have heard many teachings on the nature of reality, but they all seem to contradict one another. Please, show me the simplest, most direct path to awakening. Give me the truth that cannot be argued away." Hakuin looks at the young man, his eyes calm and penetrating, holding a universe of stillness.
He does not offer a scripture or a sermon. He offers only a command that is simultaneously a gentle invitation. You know the sound of two hands clapping, Hakuin says softly, raising his hands, pausing for a moment, and then bringing them together to produce a sharp, clear, recognizable sound. Clap. The sound is definite, born of collision. It is a moment of clear, sensory data. Now, the master continues, his voice deepening to hold the space of the question. What is the sound of one hand? The koan is given. The student is stunned. He had expected a philosophy, a verse, a meditation instruction. He received only this strange, impossible question. The young seeker leaves the presence of the master and sits down to begin his struggle. And this struggle is the heart of the koan. It is the journey from attachment to freedom. The first thing the seeker does is listen. He holds up his one hand. He tries to cup the air. He tries to rub his palm quickly against his robe. He tries everything physical. But of course, the sound he hears is merely friction, or is the profound, absolute silence. He rushes back to Hakuin, proud of his logical solution. Master, the sound of one hand is silence. Hakuin smiles, gently. You are thinking only of the opposite of two hands. That is merely the sound of two hands not clapping. It is still bound by the idea of two. Keep searching. The student tries again. His mind, trained for years in logic and debate, attempts to capture the koan with definitions. He thinks, perhaps the sound is the potential for the sound, the intention to clap, the ultimate emptiness from which sound arises. He is struggling, trying to use a fishnet to catch the moon's reflection on the water. Every answer he creates is a concept, a word, a label, a heavy log on the raft he was supposed to leave behind. He is deeply attached to the notion that the mind can solve reality, that thought can penetrate the nature of being. This attachment is the source of all mental strain and anxiety. We believe if we just think about the problem hard enough, we will control the outcome. The koan strips away this illusion. It demands a response that comes not from the contents of the mind, but from the unshakable source of the mind. The seeker enters a state of deep exhaustion. He sits for hours, days, weeks. He is not meditating on silence. He is meditating on the question itself. He finds himself caught in an endless loop. What is the sound? What is the sound? His mind is frustrated, anxious, and deeply unsettled. This is the necessary stage of non-attachment, the breaking of the will to know. The attachment we are fighting is not to things like money or comfort, but to the most insidious possession of all, the attachment to our own sense of self as a separate, knowing entity. The one hand is the self, the other hand is the world. The clap is the constant, loud, distracting noise of collision, judgment, and reaction between the two. The young man is trying to hear the sound of the self, isolated from the world. But Hakuin is pointing to something. As the seeker sits for a long, long time, his frustration eventually begins to wear itself out. The frantic effort of his mind runs dry. The conceptual answers he has collected one by one float away, like autumn leaves carried by a stream. He is left with nothing but the question, held gently, without effort, in the very center of his being. He is not thinking about the sound. He is the question. And in that moment of absolute surrender, when he finally lets go of the desperate, feverish attachment to finding a sensible answer, something profound happens. It is not a sound he hears.
It is the sudden, complete cessation of the listener. The inner noise, the constant commentary of the judging, seeking, separating mind, that noise shatters. The sound of one hand is heard when the need for the second hand, the opposing concept, the clarifying definition, dissolves completely. It is the sound of the mind before the world is split into two. It is the roar of the waterfall heard without the concept of waterfall. It is the sight of the sun setting without the concept of beauty. It is the pure, unmediated isness of reality. This realization is the true meaning of non-attachment. It is not just about not clinging to things, but not clinging to duality. We are attached to the idea of self and other, the idea of success and failure, the idea of here and there, the idea of sound and silence. These pairs are the two hands clapping, creating the loud, anxiety-inducing rhythm of our lives. The sound of one hand is the moment when you realize that self and other are merely two sides of the same single, breathing reality. Success and failure are merely transient forms of the same flow. The seeker rises from his spot. He walks back to Hakuin, but this time he walks without effort, without expectation, without a ready-made answer. His mind is vast, open, and still. The weight of his concepts is gone. He bows to the master. He does not speak. He does not offer a solution. He simply stands in the quiet, empty space of his realization. Hakuin looks back at him and nods. He sees the clarity, koan, or the parable. It is the wisdom of the uncarved block, or pu, a concept shared between the deep stillness of Zen and the flowing naturalness of Taoism. It is the purest expression of non-attachment to identity. Imagine a piece of wood. It is simple, a raw log cut from the heart of the forest. It has its own texture, its own weight, its own history of sunlight and shadow, but it has no name, no purpose beyond being. It is whole, complete, and utterly undemanding. This is the uncarved block. This is your essential nature. Before the first tool touched it, before the first concept was applied, it held infinite potential. It could become a temple pillar, a simple bowl, a masterful statue of a Buddha, or remain simply a seat by the fire. Because it is uncarved, it is defenseless, and yet entirely safe. It has no shape to lose. Now, consider the journey of life, which is the steady process of carving. From the moment we are born, the carving begins. The world looks at the rough, whole block of our being and says, "You must be a sun," and a shape is created. Then, "You must be a student," and a new line is cut. "You must be successful," and a large, deep incision defines our effort. "You must be good, or smart, or charming, or spiritual." These carvings are the labels, the roles, the expectations, and the definitions that we slowly, painstakingly accept and wear as our identity. We become the beautifully, intricately carved statue, a finished product, defined by our form. This carved statue is the ego, and in this intricate form lies our deepest attachment, and consequently, our greatest source of suffering. We become profoundly attached to the shape we have been given, or the shape we have worked so hard to create. We cling to the idea of being the successful person, the good person, the smart person. The tragedy of the carved block is its vulnerability. A statue is beautiful, but it is fragile. If someone comes along and criticizes its nose, the way it was carved, the whole form is threatened. If the world stops recognizing in the mist-shrouded hills, his carvings were famous throughout the land, so lifelike, so detailed that they seemed to breathe. Yet, when wealthy patrons came, offering him the finest, pre-sanded, perfectly shaped planks of exotic wood. He would often refuse. Instead, Ren would walk into the woods in search for a large, rough-hewn log, sometimes still wet with sap, sometimes covered in moss. One day, a wealthy merchant came to Ren and presented him with a beautifully polished piece of sandalwood, perfectly rectangular and ready for the chisel. "Master Ren," the merchant said, his voice full of pride, "this wood has been aged for 50 years. It is flawless. It is prepared. Now, carve me a magnificent dragon, one that symbolizes my immense power and success." Ren gently took the sandalwood, noting its perfect geometry. He laid it aside. "I thank you for this gift," Ren said softly, "but I cannot carve your dragon from this." The merchant was baffled. "Why not? It is the most expensive wood in the world. It is already half finished." Ren led the merchant outside his workshop, where a massive, rough chunk of oak lay on the ground. It was irregular, lumpy, and scarred by insects. "This is the wood I will use," Ren stated. "But it is nothing," the merchant exclaimed. "It has no shape. It is not perfect." Ren smiled, a deep, knowing calm filling his eyes. "That is precisely why. You ask me to carve the symbol of your power and success, but your success," Ren said, pointing to the polished sandalwood, "is a finished form. It is already defined. If I carve a dragon from a predefined piece, the dragon can only be a reflection of the wood's limitations." He gently touched the rough oak. "This block is poo. It has no definition. It is only potential. Because it is nothing, it can become everything. The wood holds no arrogance about its shape. It does not resist my chisel, because it has no shape to defend. The deepest truth of the dragon, the wild, free spirit, can only emerge from the deepest, most surrendered simplicity." Ren was not simply choosing the wood, the heavy modifier, just being. What happens when you let go of the need to be smart? You are suddenly free to ask questions without shame. You are free to be clumsy and learn slowly. You stop clinging to the label and find that true intelligence, the ability to adapt and learn, comes naturally, effortlessly, when the fear of losing the label is gone. What happens when you let go of the need to be strong? You are finally free to weep. You are free to ask for help. You are free to embrace your own vulnerability, and in that honesty, a deeper, truer strength, the strength of presence and compassion, arises. The uncarved block is impervious to insult and praise because it has no fixed surface to receive them. If you tell the rough block of oak, "You are magnificent," it does not swell with pride. It is just oak. If you tell it, "You are lumpy and useless," it does not shrink in despair. It is still just oak. It is safe because it is undefended. It is complete because it is undefined. In the quiet, slow practice of meditation, we are essentially trying to return to the uncarved block. When you sit, you stop trying to be the meditator, the carved statue. You stop trying to achieve a state of mind, the finished purpose. You simply sit, allowing the mind to be the rough, simple wood it is, sometimes noisy, sometimes still, but always whole, always complete. The mind that is at rest in its uncarved nature is the unshakable mind. It has no definition that life can challenge. It has no boundary that suffering can cross. It is simply the boundless, open potential from which all life flows. Rest in this profound simplicity now. Feel the weight of your labels and roles begin to dissolve. Let the definitions of who you think you are soften. You are not the name they gave you. You are not the job you hold. You are not the memory of your past mistakes, nor the ambition of your future successes. You are the source. You are the deep, simple, whole, and entire potential of the uncarved block.
Rest in the safety of being nothing specific and therefore everything at once. Feel the profound peace that comes from having nothing to prove, nothing sword, signifying his sharp, intense devotion to the path. Kenshin was a model of dedication. He rose before the dawn, his posture in meditation was impeccable, and his discipline in all duties was flawless. He pursued awakening with the intensity of a warrior. Yet, despite his relentless effort, Kenshin carried a profound, restless anxiety deep within him. His suffering came from his fierce attachment to the right way. He believed that awakening required a state of perfect purity, perfect stillness, and perfect form. This belief made him a relentless judge of his own circumstances. If the wind rattled the paper screen, he resisted it, seeing it as an obstacle to silence. If the cushion was slightly too firm, he resisted the discomfort, seeing it as an impediment to perfect posture. If a thought of his mother or a memory of a past mistake arose, he resisted it with fierce mental struggle, seeing it as contamination of his sacred practice. His meditation time, meant to be a refuge, was instead a battlefield. He was constantly struggling against himself, against the world, and against the flow of life. He was carrying the raft and the cup and the carved identity of the perfect meditator all at once. One afternoon, as the thick, humid air pressed down upon the temple, Kenshin was trying to sit. It was one of those days when the world seemed to conspire against stillness. A fly buzzed relentlessly around his ear. The heat made his skin feel sticky against his robes. His knees ached with a dull, insistent throb. His mind was a carnival of worries. He worried that he was failing. He worried that he wasn't practicing hard enough. He worried that the rice crop would be poor and the temple would go hungry. He shifted his weight. He adjusted his collar. He tried to swat the fly with a minimum of movement, only succeeding in stirring up his frustration. He was entirely consumed by a quiet inner scream. This is not right. I cannot find peace in these conditions. If only the fly would leave. If only the room were cooler. If only my knees did not hurt. If only my mind would stop. He was resisting the heat, the sound, the pain. Then he saw it. A creature of utter simplicity. A long pink-brown earthworm, wriggling slowly through the damp soil. The earthworm was moving, not quickly, but with a kind of absolute, undeniable purpose. It was not trying to escape the soil. It was becoming the soil. It was pushing through the dense, heavy earth, consuming the nutrients, creating air pockets for life to follow. Its entire being was an act of surrender to the medium it inhabited. Kenshin watched the earthworm's quiet journey. The creature encountered a small, sharp pebble, a massive obstacle in its world. It did not try to lift the pebble. It did not recoil in distress and complain about the unfairness of the stone. It did not stop and worry about the future of its passage. It simply found the line of least resistance, softened its own body, and flowed around the obstacle, incorporating the challenge into the design of its path. It continued its simple existence, moving through the deep, consuming the dark. It seemed utterly content to be wet, to be deep, to be dark. Kenshin was transfixed. He thought of his own suffering, just moments earlier on the cushion. I was resisting the fly. The earthworm resisted nothing. It simply moved. I was resisting the heat. The earthworm was enveloped by the damp heat of the soil. and was perfectly at home. I was resisting the dull ache in my knee. The earthworm was pushing its entire, soft, fragile body through rough earth, enduring friction and pressure in every inch of its journey, and yet it showed no sign of internal struggle. It simply accepted the pressure as the requirement of movement. The earthworm was a living embodiment of tathata, of thusness or isness. It had no concept of a better state. It was not striving to be a bird flying in the air or a fish swimming in the stream. It had no judgment about its own existence. It did not think, "This is stronger." The unshakable mind does not seek to rearrange the universe. It seeks only to meet it cleanly, exactly where it is. Imagine the depth of peace that comes from the earthworm's wisdom. When the rain falls heavily and the soil becomes saturated, the earthworm does not panic. It recognizes the wetness as the current, the condition, the isness of the moment, and it adapts. Its body softens further. It uses the water to glide. It is in perfect flow. When we, as humans, encounter the rain, the unexpected bill, the harsh word, the sudden change in plans, our first instinct is to stiffen. We tense our shoulders. We clench our jaw. We resist the circumstance, screaming internally, "This should not be happening." This inner resistance, this tightening against the flow, is what creates the emotional friction we call stress, fear, and anxiety. The outer event is just rain. The suffering is the refusal to get wet. The earthworm teaches us the radical simplicity of acceptance. Non-resistance is not a passive giving up. It is an active, compassionate surrender of the fight. It is the discipline of saying, "Ah, this moment is difficult. This moment is painful. This moment is noisy. I accept the condition of this moment, completely and without reservation." When you cease to fight the moment, you are no longer two separate forces. You become one with the current. The energy that was previously used for strenuous resistance is instantly freed up. And this free energy is your true strength, your unshakable presence. Kenshin sat down in the dirt, folding his legs with no concern for the grime on his robes. He chose a spot near the earthworm and simply watched. He noticed the earthworm did not waste a single movement. It did not hesitate. It did not retrace its steps with regret. It simply moved forward, one moment becoming the next moment. Kenshin closed his eyes. He stopped trying to force his mind into silence. He allowed the buzzing fly to be the buzzing fly. He allowed the persistent ache in his knees to be the persistent ache. The great freedom of non-attachment to preference. We spend our lives attached to the preference for ease, comfort, silence, control, and perfection. The earthworm has none of these attachments. It is attached only to the movement of life itself. Embrace the teaching of the earthworm now, as you lie in your resting place. Feel the weight of your body, the texture of the sheet, the temperature of the air. Where are you resisting? Are you resisting the thoughts that are still circling in your mind? Let them be the thoughts they are. Don't engage them, don't follow them, but simply allow them to wriggle their way through the soil of your consciousness. Are you resisting the small ache or stiffness in your body? Let the ache be there. It is the condition of this very moment. If you allow it fully, you will find that the suffering is in the resistance, not the sensation itself. The earthworm's path is the path of effortless action. It acts without holding on to the desire for a better result. It moves without resisting the immediate consequence. It simply embodies the ultimate wisdom. What is, is. To meet the moment with full compassionate acceptance is to transform that moment from a prison into a path. You realize that your safety is not dependent on the conditions of the soil, but on your ability to move with and through the soil. Rest in this profound surrender now. Feel the relief of letting go of the internal argument. You do not have to fight the night. You do not have to fight the day that is past. You do not have to fight yourself. Simply be the earthworm, moving gently, breathing deeply, completely present in the dark, rich, and honest soil of this very moment. You are free because you are entirely where you are. Part 6. Impermanence in the Falling Flower. Tonight, let us turn our attention to the central, quiet heartbeat of all Buddhist wisdom. Anicca, the deep, undeniable truth of impermanence. To find the unshakable mind, we must not only stop clinging to our identities and beliefs, but we must also stop fighting the fundamental nature of life itself, which is constant, beautiful, and sometimes painful change. We will listen to the meditation. Shedding begins. A single, perfect blossom detaches from its stem. It doesn't struggle. It doesn't cling to the wood. It simply surrenders to gravity and the air and begins its slow, silent descent. This single falling flower is the most poignant and complete teacher of non-attachment. Watch it fall. It spirals slowly, catching the last of the light, a vibrant splash of color against the darkening air. It is exquisitely beautiful, perhaps even more beautiful in its surrender than it was when fixed on the branch. It is completing its purpose. It is embracing its final form. The flower on the branch is attached to the tree. It is an inseparable part of the living form. The flower in the air is detached. It is pure movement, pure freedom, pure change. And yet, it is still the same flower. This is the great teaching. Form fades, but essence remains. We as human beings are constantly trying to cling to the blossom on the branch. We desperately want to hold on to the form of our lives, the form of our youth, the form of our successful relationship, the form of our health, the form of our wealth, the form of this perfect, calm moment right now. But life is movement. It is the wind constantly shaking the branch. And when we cling to a fixed form, when we attach ourselves to the way things must be, we suffer intensely the moment the wind begins to blow. The pain of loss is not in the absence of the thing. It is in the fierce attachment to its permanence. Imagine a master sculptor who has spent 10 years creating a masterpiece carved from ice. It is a stunning, intricate creation, the most beautiful form he has ever made. He puts it on display for one day. People gasp at its beauty. But by the second day, the sun is higher, the air is warmer, and the ice begins to weep. It drips, its sharp edges soften. By the third day, the magnificent statue is a pool of water reflecting the sky. If the sculptor were attached to the form of the ice, he would be devastated. He would try to shade it, to freeze it. Attention. We do not love it in spite of the fact that it will fall. We love it because of that fact. Its impermanence is what lends its presence such sharp, delicate beauty. Think of a difficult moment in your own life, a change that felt like a catastrophic loss. Perhaps it was the loss of a relationship, the end of a job, or the transition of a child growing older. In that moment, your whole being cried out, "Stop! Stay! I need this form to last." That cry of resistance was the suffering. The unshakable wisdom teaches us to see the entire world as the great shedding. We are surrounded by masters of non-attachment. The river does not weep when its water flows to the sea. It simply becomes the sea. The breath does not cling to the lungs. It releases itself fully, creating the empty space necessary for the next inhale. The tide does not demand to stay high. It surrenders to the moon and retreats, trusting its return. To cultivate the unshakable mind is to become like the cherry blossom in its moment of falling. It is a moment of total, quiet acceptance. The flower does not look down and regret the branch. It does not look up and worry about the ground. It is perfectly, completely contained in the present movement of its transition. This is where true safety resides, not in holding on to what is, but in trusting the movement to what will be. When you realize that the falling is not a death but a transformation, the flower will eventually become the nourishment for the root. You stop panicking. You let yourself fall gently, allowing the movement of life to take you. This moment of letting go is not passive resignation. It is the most profound and active form of trust. It is trusting that the essence of who you are, the awareness, the consciousness, the presence that sees the bloom and witnesses the fall, is not subject to the laws of impermanence. The awareness is the empty, uncarved space that holds the flow. It is the sky that the clouds of change pass through. The sky itself is never stained, never lost, and never shaken. Settle your mind now and let go of all the fixed forms you are desperately trying to hold. Let comes from knowing that because everything changes, you never have to hold on to a single thing. You are free to love it fully and free to let it go completely. The gate of no gate. Let us now move deeper into the territory of radical non-attachment, confronting one of the final, most subtle attachments of the seeking mind, the attachment to the path itself. We turn our quiet attention to the great Zen text, the Mumonkan, which translates simply as the gateless gate or the gate of no gate. Imagine a seeker standing before a colossal wall that seems to stretch endlessly into the misty horizon. This wall represents the boundary between the world of suffering and the world of liberation. In the center of this wall, there stands a massive, imposing gate. This gate is beautifully crafted, heavy with intricate carvings, and held fast by thick bronze bolts. It is the destination, the promised entrance to the sanctuary. The seeker has been told for years that the purpose of life is to pass through this gate. So he spends his life preparing. He studies the locks, he collects the right keys, he attempts to climb the walls, he searches for the proper password. His entire identity, his every action, becomes defined by the goal of getting through the gate. He is attached to the idea of achievement. He is attached to the idea of transformation. He is attached to the idea of being an insider. But the teaching of the Mumonkan, the teaching of the great Zen masters, whispers a terrifying, beautiful secret. There is no lock on the gate. There is no password. In fact, there is no gate to begin with. The greatest freedom comes from the realization that the barrier you are so desperately trying to break through is entirely a mental construction. A magnificent, convincing illusion projected by the mind's attachment to the idea of separation. The true unshakable mind is found when we cease to struggle against a phantom boundary. The traditional path is built on the idea of duality. Here is ignorance, and there is enlightenment. Here is the impure self, and there is the perfected self.
The sip of tea and smiled. This tea, he said, is the taste of the other side. You have been striving toward a door that exists only because you refuse to sit down on the threshold. The gateless gate is a koan not of architecture, but of trust. It asks us to trust that we are already, right now, completely where we need to be. It asks us to trust that the water of the river is already the water of the ocean, even if we label it differently. To be attached to the path is to miss the landscape you are already walking in. Imagine a man who travels across the world to find a famous treasure hidden in a secret cavern. He spends months traveling, enduring hardship, attached to the goal of wealth and discovery. He finally reaches the mouth of the cavern. It is dark, difficult, and narrow. He knows that if he can just squeeze through the difficult opening, he will find the fortune he seeks. He pushes, he struggles, he scrapes his body, desperate to get through the narrow passage. Then a quiet voice from behind him says, "My friend, you are already standing inside the cavern." The man turns around confused. He looks at the vast, open sky and the green valley behind him. "No," he insists, pointing to the dark hole. "The cavern is in there. The treasure is inside the darkness." The voice says, "The darkness you see is just the shadow cast by your own body as you strain against the entrance. The treasure you seek is not gold, but the clear, open air you breathe, the stillness in your own heart, and the simple truth of the sun on your face." The man had become so utterly attached to the idea of going somewhere and achieving a transformation that he had lost the ability to simply be where he was. The gate of no gate dismantles the spiritual ego, the last vestige of the carved block. It is the ego that says, "I am not enlightened yet. I need to do one more thing. I need to read one more book. I need to sit one more hour." This is the attachment to the idea of becoming someone other than who you are. But the wisdom of the masters is that you cannot become what you already are. The water cannot become wet. The unshakable mind is the mind that has abandoned the need. Convinced we're real. The koan asks us to sit with the deep, simple, and utterly destabilizing truth. The only thing separating you from peace is the very effort you are making to reach it. Let the striving stop now. Feel the muscles in your body, the muscles around your eyes, your jaw, your chest begin to soften. These are the muscles that have been tensed in preparation for fighting the invisible lock, for battering down the illusory door. Let them relax completely. You are safe. You are where you need to be. There is no other side you must struggle toward. Rest in the vast, open space where the gate used to be. You are not a traveler approaching a destination. You are the destination itself, moving gently through time. The path and the goal are one, and you are entirely free of the burden of the gate. The unshakable mind is the mind that is at peace with its present, ungated reality. It is the mind that knows the truth of the no gate. If I am already here, how could I ever have been truly away? Rest well in this quiet, effortless realization. The two monks and the woman. Let us settle now into the deep, reflective quiet of the Zen tradition, where the greatest lessons on freedom are often hidden within the simplest, most human moments. Tonight we explore the subtle, yet profound attachment to judgment and memory, the invisible weight we carry long after an event has passed. We listen to the story of the two monks and the woman. Imagine the season of heavy rains in the Japanese countryside, centuries ago. The roads are not paved but are winding, muddy tracks that follow the contours of the rice paddies.
The air is thick, saturated with the scent of wet earth and distant cedar. Two traveling Zen monks, Tanzan and Aikido, were walking along such a road. They were companions, but vastly different in temperament and understanding of the Dharma. Tanzan was large, practical, and embodied the robust, free-flowing spirit of Zen. His eyes held a gentle humor, and he lived with an open, immediate responsiveness to the needs of the moment. He saw the world not through the lens of rigid doctrine, but dressed in a fine silk kimono, the fabric delicate and vibrant against the dull, dark background of the mud. She was clearly distressed. The banks were steep and slick, and she could not cross without ruining her elegant clothing, or worse, falling into the rough current. She looked helplessly at the rushing water and the thick, grasping mud. The monk stopped. Now, you must understand the deep severity of the rule. In the ancient Zen tradition, monks were bound by strict vows of separation from worldly life. Chief among these was the clear prohibition: a monk is forbidden to touch a woman. It was considered a serious defilement, a dangerous distraction that threatened the purity of the mind and the integrity of the monastic order. Aikido felt the certainty of the rule course through him, a stiffening in his spine. He mentally prepared to walk around the desperate situation, to keep his gaze averted, to avoid any possibility of transgression. But before Aikido could even formulate his correct, rule-bound thought, Tanzan acted. Tanzan looked at the woman, saw her fear and difficulty, and saw the simple, immediate need. He saw the need for compassion, which transcends all rules of form. He did not hesitate. He did not debate with himself. He did not consult the rule book in his mind. He simply put down his heavy walking staff and his meager pack. With quiet, gentle strength, he walked toward the woman. He leaned down, and without a word of explanation or apology, he lifted her into his arms. She was light, perhaps, or perhaps Tanzan's devotion to the moment made the weight irrelevant. He held her carefully, her precious silk kept away from the mud, and he carried her effortlessly across the swollen ford, stepping solidly through the cold, brown water. He placed her gently down on the dry ground on the far side. He waited a moment for her to find her balance, gave a simple, wordless bow of acknowledgement, picked up his own things, and began walking again. The entire event lasted no more than a minute. The moment of need was met with the moment of compassionate action. But in the mind of Aikido, the moment was eternal. Aikido had watched the entire scene unfold with a shock that paralyzed him. He was internally screaming. He touched her. He the silk, the proximity of the forbidden, the sheer casualness of Tanzan's touch. He debated the ethical implications. He catalogued the violation. He judged his companion harshly, and by extension, judged the entire system of Zen that could allow such a man to claim mastery. He was carrying the woman, not physically, but mentally. The actual event, the helping of a distressed person, was over and done. The woman was safe, miles behind them, probably already enjoying her day. The need for the action was gone, but Aikido refused to let the memory of the action go. He had become deeply attached to his own judgment of the event, and that attachment was now a 100-pound weight strapped to his consciousness. Every step he took was a step of internal suffering. He was no longer walking in the present moment, listening to the wind or feeling the sun break through the clouds. He was walking in the past, in the mud, in the transgression, carrying the heavy burden of his own unforgiving moral framework. His inner rigidity was a far greater impediment to his spiritual path than any external physical contact. He was attached to his own purity, and his attachment to purity made him impure, with anger, frustration, and judgment. As the afternoon wore on, the weight became unbearable.
Akito's steps were shorter. His breath labored. The silence, which Tanzan wore like a light robe, became a crushing pressure upon Akito's chest. He could not stand the disparity between Tanzan's carefree presence and his own internal storm of moral outrage. Finally, as they approached a small tea house, a distance of many hours and many miles from the crossing, Akito stopped. He turned to Tanzan, his face tight with strained emotion, his voice thin and sharp with accusation. "Tanzan," he burst out, "we are monks. We are forbidden to go near females, especially young ones. Why did you carry that woman across the water? You have broken your sacred vow. How could you do such a thing?" Tanzan stopped his easy pace. He turned slowly, his eyes still calm, still reflecting the released. Akito, however, had transformed a 1-minute event into a 5-mile psychological burden. He was not attached to the woman. He was attached to the judgment of the woman and the memory of the judgment. He had allowed a single, transient experience to occupy his mind for hours, contaminating his present moment with a past transgression that was not even his own. The wisdom of this koan is a profound mirror for our own lives. How often do we, too, carry the past for miles and miles? The old argument, "You had a difficult conversation yesterday," a brief, harsh exchange of words. The conversation is over. The moment is finished. But you wake up today and carry the woman. You replay the words. You refine your defense. You prepare a future counter-argument. You are carrying the heavy, cumbersome weight of a finished event into the fresh space of your new day. The past failure. You made a mistake at work or in a relationship months ago. The damage has been repaired. The lesson has been learned. The consequence has passed. But you are still carrying the woman. You are attached to the identity of the person who failed. You let the ghost of that past mistake darken the bright potential of your current actions. The future anxiety. The thing you fear has not happened, but you are carrying the woman in anticipation. You hold the entire imagined future catastrophe on your shoulders, allowing the weight of a non-existent event to cripple your present peace. In every case, the suffering is not the event itself, but the attachment to the mental cargo of the event. The unshakable mind, the mind that meets life with calm awareness, is the mind that learns to practice radical release. It is the discipline of saying to the mind, "This event is finished. The form has faded. Put the woman down." Tanzan teaches us that true compassion is only possible when it is followed by complete non-attachment. He could not have carried the woman if he was paralyzed by the rule. He carried her out of freedom, and having carried her, he instantly released her, proving that the action did not cling to his mind, proving that his freedom remained untouched. To rest in the unshakable mind is to be like Tanzan. It is to know that your true purity is not in the absence of the actors or yourself. The only thing you are defiling is your own present moment of peace. Rest now in the quiet wisdom of letting go. Allow your consciousness to scan the events of your day, your week, your life. If you find a past moment or judgment that you are still carrying, a weight, a resentment, a shame, an argument, gently acknowledge it, and then, with the same ease with which Tanzan set his pack down, simply release it. Let it go. Leave the memory on the far bank of the river. You are free to walk on now, light and unburdened, into the open, fresh space of the present moment. The path ahead is clear, and the only thing you need to carry is your own steady, deep, unshakable breath. The Sand Mandala. Tonight, we move to a quiet wisdom practiced high in the cold, clear air of the Himalayas. A profound teaching on the nature of creation, attachment, and release.
This is the practice of the sand mandala, a visual prayer and a complete philosophical treatise on impermanence. It is the perfect illustration of why the unshakable mind does not panic when things fall apart, but instead trusts the cycle of dissolution. Imagine yourself now in a small, hushed temple room. The light filtering through the high windows is dust-filled and soft. The air is still, carrying the faint, sweet scent of incense and old parchment. Gathered around a large, flat, wooden platform are several monks, their faces placid, their movements slow and meticulously intentional. They are the artists of the ephemeral. Their creation is the sand mandala. The process is one of astonishing patience and devotion. The monks do not use brushes or paints. They use crushed, colored sand, mineral pigments ground fine as dust, kept in small, sacred piles of reds, blues, golds, and whites. They hold slender, cone-shaped funnels, called chakpur, which they gently stroke with a metal rod. The vibration causes the fine grains of sand to trickle out in a steady, infinitesimal stream. Hour after hour, day after day, week after week, the mandala grows. It is a slow.
Our home, our financial plan, is an accumulation of vast, painstaking effort, grain by grain. We invest our whole heart, our entire sense of self, into the form we are creating. The monk, sitting perfectly still, placing a grain of green sand to represent the wisdom of action, is completely invested in the purity of his work. He is attached to the doing. He is committed to the perfection of the form. And yet, deep within the heart of this devotion is the profound, silent understanding that this attachment to form is temporary. The monk knows, from the moment the first grain touches the platform, that the entire, magnificent creation is destined for dissolution. The very purpose of the sand mandala is not its completion, but its ritual undoing. Imagine the work is complete. After weeks of sustained, flawless effort, the mandala is finished. It is a breathtaking vision, a two-dimensional architectural marvel, glittering with a million specks of color. It is a perfect, temporary world. This moment is the peak of its form. It is the moment when the human mind, in its attachment to beauty and completion, would most want to say, "Freeze this, preserve this, keep this forever." The mind, conditioned by the idea that permanence equals safety, cries out for the form to be protected. We do this in our own lives, too. When a moment is perfect, a sunset, a shared laugh, a feeling of security, we try to hold it captive in our memory, to grasp its essence, creating the friction of attachment. We try to live in the finished product of our perfect life, believing that this perfect picture is the source of our joy. But the sand mandala denies this attachment. It states clearly, the source of joy is in the pure act of living and releasing. The ritual of dissolution begins. The gathered monks chant ancient, resonating sutras that fill the room with deep, grounding sound. The master monk stands over the finished mandala, not with a tool of violence, but with a gentle, brass instrument. He traces a delicate line through the sand, often starting from the outside edge, breaking the sacred symmetry. This colored sand, the magnificent picture of the world, is intentionally, ritually, and completely destroyed. As the beautiful, intricate form dissolves into the formless pile of dust, the lesson is delivered straight to the heart. The effort was not wasted. The beauty was not lost. The meaning was not destroyed. The true value was in the process of single-pointed effort, of devotion, of creation.
The purpose of the mandala was to train the minds of the monks in patience, focus, and finally, absolute letting go. That training, that spiritual discipline, is the essence that remains. It is the unshakable wisdom they carry in their hearts, even when the sand is gone. The essence is unshakable because it is invisible. It is not found in the material world. If you are attached to the finished picture of your life, the perfect marriage, the perfect career, the perfect health, the inevitable sweep of life will devastate you. That attachment makes you weak and shaky. If you are attached to the process, to the continuous creation, the effort, the willingness to love fully, and the absolute willingness to release everything, then you are strong. The outer world can dissolve, and your inner wisdom remains intact. You know the meaning is within you, not in the external circumstance. The final act of the ritual confirms this truth. The gathered pile of merged colored sand is not simply thrown into a trash bin. It is carefully gathered into an urn and carried in a solemn procession down to the nearest river or stream. The monks stand on the bank, chanting one final prayer. The master pours the urn's contents, the dust that was once a magnificent cosmos, into the flowing water. The current instantly takes the sand. The colors blur, separate momentarily, and then are absorbed into the gray-brown flow. They are not destroyed. They are released. The particles that represented the entire universe are returned to the flow of the universe. They will eventually settle to the riverbed, carried to the ocean, perhaps become part of a distant shoreline. This act of pouring the sand into the river is the ultimate act of non-attachment. It is the final confirmation that the river of life. The love you gave, the lessons you learned, the compassion you practiced. This is the essence that remains. It is now part of the current, blessing your future path and the paths of all those around you. Rest in the peace of this deep, constant flow. You are the empty platform, patiently awaiting the next sacred design. You are the creation, temporary and vibrant. And you are the flowing river, boundless and eternal, receiving all forms and letting them go again. There is nothing to hold on to, not even the finished picture of a perfect night's rest. The form will dissolve, and the peace will remain. The Sand Mandala. Tonight, we move to a quiet wisdom, practiced high in the cold, clear air of the Himalayas. A profound teaching on the nature of creation, attachment, and release. This is the practice of the Sand Mandala, a visual prayer and a complete philosophical treatise on impermanence. It is the perfect illustration of why the unshakable mind does not panic when things fall apart, but instead trusts the cycle of dissolution. Imagine yourself now transported in the deepest quiet of your mind to a small remote monastery nestled in the mountain snows. The air outside is crisp and thin, but here, in the inner chamber, the atmosphere is hushed and warm, softened by devotion. The only sounds are the deep, rhythmic exhalation of monks and the almost imperceptible shh of colored dust falling. This room is sacred, dedicated entirely to a singular, paradoxical act of creation. Gathered around a large, flat wooden platform are several monks, their robes the color of deep saffron and burgundy. Their faces are placid, their movements slow, and meticulously intentional. They are the artists of the ephemeral, dedicating weeks of their lives to painting the cosmos with colored dust. Their creation is the Sand Mandala. The initial work is structural. A master geometrician first draws the vast, detailed blueprint onto the wooden platform. This blueprint is not arbitrary. It is a sacred text made visible,
a map of an enlightened realm, often the abode of a particular deity, a perfect color. Hour after hour, day after day, week after week, the mandala grows. It is a slow, painstaking process of accumulation. A tiny speck of blue sand is placed against the microscopic line of yellow. A circle is formed by the careful, non-stop accumulation of a million separate acts of focus. The mandalas are complex geometric labyrinths, radiating outward from a central point of absolute purity, moving toward the world and then inviting the mind back toward the sacred center. This act of creation is a profound mirror for the process of our own lives. We, too, are constantly building a form. We build our world, our identity, and our sense of safety, grain by grain. Each grain of sand placed in the mandala is like a moment of focus in our life. Our career is built by one early morning, one difficult meeting, one act of persistent diligence, repeated again and again. Our identity is constructed by one choice after another, one habit stacked upon the last, one opinion added to the mind's profile. Our relationships are built on one conversation, one shared moment of vulnerability, one act of kindness, repeated and repeated until a vast, intricate pattern of connection emerges. We invest our whole heart, our entire intention, and our deepest sense of effort into the form we are creating. This investment is not wrong. It is the very essence of living. It is the act of creation that gives meaning to the present moment. The monk, sitting perfectly still, placing a grain of gold sand to represent the wisdom of realization, is entirely present. He is utterly devoted to the beauty and precision of his work. He is attached to the doing, to the focused, sacred, intentional labor. He is committed to the perfection of the form. But within this commitment lies the subtle trap of the human heart, the attachment to permanence. We struggle to accept that the very perfection we have worked so hard to create, the beautiful form of our life, is made of nothing more than temporary, loose grains of sand held together only by the fragile force of our intention and the temporary absence of disturbance. The process of creation, therefore, is also the process of learning non-attachment. The monks know from the moment the first grain touches, conditioned by the idea that permanence equals safety, cries out for the form to be protected. This is too beautiful to lose. We experience this same desperate clinging in our own moments of personal perfection. A moment of profound love, a success achieved, a state of perfect health. The fear immediately arises. I must hold on to this. If I lose this form, I lose everything. But the sand mandala is the silent teacher that denies this attachment. It states clearly, the source of joy is in the pure act of living and releasing. The work is complete. The monks take a moment, sometimes hours, simply to witness the finished work. This is the moment of gratitude, of acknowledging the beauty of what was created. It is a moment of deep, appreciative presence. Then, the final, most crucial teaching begins, the ritual of dissolution. The monks gather. The master monk stands before the work, his face showing neither elation for the completion nor regret for what is about to happen, but only pure presence. The air is filled with the deep, resonating chant of ancient sutras, sounds that affirm the cyclical nature of all existence. The master takes a slender, brass instrument. He does not use a knife, nor a heavy tool. The act must be gentle, intentional, sacred. He traces a delicate line through the sand, often starting from the outside edge, breaking the sacred symmetry of the pattern. This first movement is the key, the intentional breaking of the form. It is a conscious, sacred act of non-attachment. It is the ritual recognition of anicca. The monk is saying silently to his own heart and to the hearts of all who witness, we have created this beauty from nothing, and now we will return it to nothing. confirming that the truth lies beyond all fixed form. The cutting of the first line is terrifying to the ego, which is built on the preservation of form. The ego screams, "Stop! The perfection is being destroyed." But to the unshakable mind, it is a moment of profound relief. The burden of maintaining perfection is gone. The anxiety of clinging to a fixed, complete state is instantly dissolved. The master then takes a brush and begins to sweep. It is not a hesitant, wisdom the monks now carry in their hearts, even when the sand is gone. The essence is unshakable because it is invisible and internal. It is not found in the material world. If you are attached to the finished picture of your life, the perfect job title, the perfect bank account, the perfect unblemished relationship, the inevitable sweep of life will devastate you. That attachment makes your mind fragile and shaky. But if you are attached to the process, to the continuous creation, the loving effort, the willingness to engage fully, and the absolute willingness to release everything, then you are strong. The outer world can dissolve, and your inner wisdom remains intact. You know the meaning is within you, in your capacity to create and to love, not in the external circumstance that will surely fade. The final act of the ritual confirms this truth. The gathered pile of merged, colored sand is not simply dismissed. It is carefully gathered into an urn and carried in a slow, silent, solemn procession down from the temple and out to the nearest flowing river or stream. The monks stand on the bank, chanting one final prayer of dedication. The master pours the urn's contents, the dust that was once a magnificent cosmos, into the flowing water. The current instantly takes the sand. The colors blur, separate momentarily into streaks of primary hues, and then are fully absorbed into the gray-brown flow of the water. They are not destroyed. They are released. The particles that represented the entire universe are returned to the flow of the universe. They will settle to the riverbed, be carried to the ocean, perhaps become part of a distant shoreline. The mandala has become an offering, a blessing carried by the current. This act of pouring the sand into the river is the ultimate act of non-attachment. It is the final confirmation that energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change form. The creation is returned to the creator. The form dissolves, but the essence of its meaning continues to flow, becoming a blessing to all living things downstream. This is the profound safety of the unshakable mind. Trust deep, constant flow now. You are the empty platform, patiently awaiting the next sacred design. You are the creation, temporary and vibrant. And you are the flowing river, boundless and eternal, receiving all forms and letting them go again. There is nothing to hold on to, not even the finished picture of a perfect night's rest. The form will dissolve and the peace will remain. The sky-like awareness. We have journeyed far tonight, through the heavy currents of the river, the overflowing scholar's cup, the soundless enigma of the one hand, the rough simplicity of the uncarved block, the acceptance of the earthworm, the gentle fall of the cherry blossom, the illusion of the gateless gate, and the dissolution of the sand mandala. Each step has been a subtle lesson in non-attachment, a deep practice of letting go of the external forms of things. Now, as we near the end of our journey, let us turn the gaze inward one last time. We are no longer looking at the raft or the flower. We are looking at the essential, unmoving heart of who we are. We seek the ultimate refuge, the sky-like awareness
that nothing can disturb. Imagine you are sitting on the highest peak of a quiet mountain, wrapped in profound stillness. Above you stretches the vast, empty canvas of the sky. The sky is the perfect metaphor for the unshakable mind. It is boundless, infinite, and utterly indifferent to the contents that pass through it. Think of the sky on a clear, perfect summer day. It is a brilliant, welcoming blue. The sun is warm, the air is clean. In this moment, the sky seems to be the embodiment of perfection, of peace, of clarity. This is the life we are attached to, the perfect day, the perfect plan, the perfect feeling of calm. We try to grasp the blue, to hold the clarity, believing that this state of perfect form is where our safety lies. But then the weather shifts. The air cools. Dark, heavy clouds begin to gather. They roll in, thick and gray, blocking the sun, obscuring the blue. Soon the sky is filled with a churning,
Never broken by the lightning. It does not rage against the thunder. It remains, in its essence, pure open space, the neutral container that simply allows the weather to be the weather. The wisdom of the sky-like awareness is the ultimate non-attachment. It is the realization that you are not your experience. You are the awareness that holds your experience. Your thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, physical sensations, joys, and sorrows, these are all the changing, temporary clouds passing through the vast space of your mind. Think of your own emotional storms. The clouds of anxiety that roll in and block the sun of your calm. The clouds of anger that bring thunder and a momentary downpour of pain. The clouds of deep sorrow that linger, gray and heavy, for days. The anxious mind is desperately trying to control the weather. It tries to disperse the clouds by thinking them away. It tries to force the blue sky back by willpower or distraction. This struggle is exhausting and futile because the sky cannot push away the clouds. It can only allow them to be. The unshakable mind does not fight the clouds. It rests in the knowing that it is the sky. When the heavy cloud of deep worry appears, you simply notice it. You do not invite it in for tea, nor do you try to violently banish it. You simply label it, a worry cloud. And you allow it to move across the vastness of your awareness without attaching to the story it tells. The cloud of worry does not make your essential nature worried. It only occupies a temporary space within you. And just like all things that are born of impermanence, it will move on. It will dissipate, change form, and vanish entirely, leaving the blue, clear, boundless space of your awareness untouched. This is the profound safety of non-attachment. You cannot be shaken if you are the space that holds the shaking. The anxiety of modern life stems from our deep attachment to the belief that we are the storm. We believe that if the body is in pain, I am pain. If the mind is anxious, I am anxiety. If the circumstance is chaotic, I am chaos. This is the ultimate error of clinging to the content. You are the stillness. Let the final thoughts of your day, the last wisps of planning, the fading images of the past, drift by like quiet clouds. Do not follow them. Do not judge them. Simply watch them float across the infinite space of your inner sky. The deep blue of your consciousness is always there, behind the storm, behind the gray, behind the night. It is untouched, clear, vast, and entirely safe. This is the meaning of the unshakable mind. It is not the mind that never feels fear, but the mind that feels fear without becoming the fear. It is the peace that is not dependent on the absence of conflict, but is found in the presence of spacious awareness that contains all conflict. Rest now, dear friend,
in the vast, unconditional safety of your own being. You have already let go of the raft, emptied the cup, and dissolved the mandala. All that remains is the profound, quiet truth that you are the space that holds the universe, and nothing can shake you from that resting place. The path is not a struggle. The path is the realization that you are already the sky. Rest well, dear friend.